But 250,000 people, it's unimaginable in any country.
This is the result when you have a lot of terrorism supported by regional power and by the West. It's not only terrorists coming from within Syria, terrorists coming from more than 100 countries around the world. They wanted to make Syria a hub for terrorism, and that's the natural situation. And if we wouldn't defend our country, that number would be many folds.
You mentioned terrorism. It seems that in recent days there have been a huge development in the Syrian crisis. What do you think was more important date for development of this crisis? September 30th and the Russian intervention, or November 13th, the Paris terror attacks?
No, definitely the Russian participation, or what they announced as a front against the terrorism. This is the most important, because this is the practical thing against terrorism. While in Paris, what's happening on the political level is just to dissipate the feeling of the French, like saying the French are going to attack ISIS in very different way. So what does it mean that? Wasn't they serious before the attack on Paris? So they're going to only dissipate the feeling of the French, nothing serious, while the Russians are very serious in fighting terrorism, and there's cooperation between them and the Syrian army.
So you don't think that actually the increase of attacks on the Western coalition or the Grand Coalition under the US leadership is not helping?
Since the beginning of that coalition, if you want to talk about facts, not opinion, since the beginning of that coalition, ISIS has expanded, and the recruits from around the world has increased. While since the participation of the Russian in the same fight, so-called against terrorism, ISIS has been shrinking, and al-Nusra, of course, and the other terrorist groups. So this is reality. The facts are telling.
Isn't that because, military speaking, simply the Russian Air Force could work as Air Force of Syrian army?
Because there's cooperation, that's what I said. You cannot destroy terrorism from the air. You cannot. That's impossible. The American has been trying this in Afghanistan for how long? More than 12 or 13 years. Did they achieve anything? Nothing. The terrorism is still strong in Afghanistan. So you cannot. You need cooperation from within that country. Any power. But the major power in Syria is the Syrian army and, of course, the government.
French president is trying to get together a broader coalition against terrorism. Are you skeptical about his efforts?
Definitely. If they wanted to learn from what happened in Paris recently, why didn't they learn from Charlie Hebdo? The same principle, the same concept. And we said at that time that this is only the tip of the iceberg. What's under the water is much bigger. They didn't learn. This is first. Second, you cannot fight terrorism while you are supporting the terrorists directly with armaments and having alliance with the staunchest supporters of terrorism in the world, which is the Saudi kingdom. You cannot. This is contradiction. You cannot the police and the thief at the same time. You have to choose either way to stand.
But I didn't hear about any Western supplies to al-Nusra or Islamic State.
You have them on the internet, very clear. French and other, of course, different made arms. But the French missiles are existed. How could a country like France sell such weapons to a destination that it doesn't know, or that they don't know where to go? It's impossible. They know through Saudi, through Qatar, and maybe through other countries, definitely.
There was an incident on Turkish borders, a downed Russian bomber. Do you think this incident would influence the outcome of this French president's efforts to create a broader coalition? Do you think it will complicate even the peace talks in Syria?
I don't think so, but I think that it has shown the real intention of Erdogan, who, let's say, lost his nerve just because the Russian intervention has changed the balance on the ground. So the failure of Erdogan in Syria, the failure of his terrorist groups, means his political demise. So he wants to do anything in order to put obstacles in front of any success. So he did it, but I don't think it's going to change any balance. The war against terrorism is continuing. The Russian support and participation is going to be stronger. It is stronger anyway. And I think there's no way back in that regard, whether he do it again this way or another way.
US president is saying he doesn't want to repeat the same mistake, to make a ground invasion without actually knowing who will fill in the vacuum. Yeah. Most of the presidential candidates in recent elections are saying that they want to do much more than just bombing. What do you think is more realistic approach which will lead to actually defeating the Islamic State?
Actually, if you want to talk about the terrorism in general, not only is ISIS, you have let's say, axis or multi-aspect solution. It's part of it is related to the ideology, part of it related to the economy, to the political stance, political cooperation, and the last thing is security, cooperation, and fighting directly. Because of the situation that we are in now, there's no way but to fight them directly. But this is not enough. You need, first of all, now, if you want to fight them and defeat them, you have to cut and suffocate their supplies, armaments, money, and recruits that are coming mainly through Turkey, and with the support of the Saudi and Qatari. This is the first step you take while you are attacking them on the ground. The problem now that we are fighting the terrorists, but they have unlimited supply, unwarranted supply from many different countries, mainly regional, with the support or overlooking of the West, or some of the Western countries, to be precise.
You said that your priority is to defeat terrorists before political solution. What do you mean by defeat the terrorism? That there will be no armed opposition groups in Syria left?
You cannot talk about opposition in the political sense while they are holding arms. You know, in your country, when you talk about opposition, it's only political movement first. Second, if it's political, it should have a grassroots. So when we talk about rebels, militants who are holding guns and any other armaments to attack people, to attack Syrian army, to destroy any public property or private properties and so on, this is terrorism. There's no other definition. So we don't accept the term of militant opposition or military opposition or moderate opposition having armaments. This is not opposition, this is terrorism. Opposition for us is the political movement. Outside Syria, inside Syria, doesn't matter. Of course, the other aspect of the opposition is to be patriotic, not be opposition while it's formed in France or in Qatar or Saudi Arabia or USA or whatever, or in UK. It should be Syrian, formed in Syria, and we have Syrian opposition. We have real Syrian opposition. How big, how strong, this is another issue. So defeating the terrorism is removing obstacles from the way of any political process we want to take. Now, if you agree upon any steps or procedures with any opposition in the world, Syrian opposition, I mean, what can you achieve? Can you make real elections? Can you bring stability with the opposition? They're not, because the terrorists have their own world, they have their own goals, they have their own agenda and ideology. It's completely different from the political part. So if you start with the political process, we have to start it. I didn't say we don't start it. I said if you want to make concrete steps, it should be after we start defeating the terrorism. I didn't say after we defeat, because the defeat is a long process.